Hey guys, welcome to Easy Academy. Today we're learning about something called Boyle's Law. And what Boyle's Law essentially is just a relationship between two different variables. And these two different variables are pressure and volume. So basically we'll abbreviate it as P and V. But in order for Boyle's Law to be true, you have to remember that there has to be two different constants. And these two different constants are the temperature and also the number of particles. So make sure the temperature and the number of particles are the same before doing any problem with Boyle's Law. Now, what exactly is a relationship between pressure and volume? Well, their relationship is basically something we would call inversely proportional. Now, what does this essentially mean? Well, this basically means that as volume goes up, pressure goes down, and the inverse is the same as well. So as volume goes down, pressure goes up. Now, a graph for this would look something like this. Basically an inverse graph. Now, why exactly is this true? Let's take a diagram example here. So we have two different boxes. Let's pretend they're the same size. Now we have three particles in the first box, and they're all flying around, colliding, and just doing what particles do. Now, what happens when we halve the volume of the box and we put those three particles in the halved volume? Well, now you can see there's a lot less room for the particles to move around, which means they collide more and more frequently with each other. And what this basically means is that the pressure suddenly went up, because the pressure is the number of collisions that happen. So basically, as you decrease the volume from a whole box to half of a box, you increase the number of collisions because there's less space to move around in, so the particles collide more and you increase pressure. And the same thing here, vice versa. So if you have a half box right here, and then you suddenly increase the number of the volume, and suddenly there's a lot more space for the particles to move around in, and they don't collide as often with each other. And that's basically Boyle's Law. Okay, so now let's do a problem on Boyle's Law. So the problem we have here basically says a sample of oxygen gas occupies a volume of 100 milliliters at 100 torr pressure. What volume will it occupy at 200 torr pressure? Well, remember, we know that the relationship between pressure and volume is proportional. It's inversely proportional. So basically, we see that pressure has increased from 100 torr pressure to 200 torr pressure. So basically, now we can know what the volume actually ended up being, because we know that the relationship between pressure and volume is inversely proportional, and we see that pressure increased, so we know that volume has to decrease at the same proportion. And to do that, we just divide the initial over the final, which we'd get 1/2. So the proportion would be 1/2, and we just multiply 100 by 1/2, and we get 50 milliliters. And that's how you solve a Boyle's Law problem.